I'm Nina Soden, urban fantasy author of the Sector C series and the Blood Angel series. And today I am so excited because one of my good friends is on with me today. So let me introduce you to Stacy Kingsley. She grew up loving the horror genre. When she first saw the movie CUJO, which, by the way, is a fantastic movie, fantastic book, she learned that you have to wait until the end because even in those last 5 minutes, anything could happen. So she loves horror so much that she wrote her master's thesis on the decline of horror in pop culture, which I want to talk to her about. So we'll get a little bit more information on that. And she loves to watch every horror movie that she can get her hands on, which I completely agree with. Whether it's terrible or wonderful, it's always so much fun. Her love of zombies stems from her desire to find true monsters, not sparkling vampires, loving werewolves, or ghosts that help you solve mysteries. So we're going to talk to her about her zombie books, and we're going to go in depth. So, Stacy, without further ado, welcome to my channel, and thank you so much for coming and joining me. It has been too long since I have seen your face and gotten to chat with you. All right, tell us just a little bit about you as a writer and why you started writing.
I started writing, actually I started writing really young. I was 9 when I wrote my first book. It was a mystery about my toy tiger Jake. I actually have a tattoo of him. And since then I couldn't stop writing. I really write so that I don't end up, in a straitjacket.
Okay, yeah. So the voices will stop talking to you?
For a little while.
Yeah. So tell me about this thesis that you wrote about horror in pop culture. Why? And what makes you believe that there's a decline? And what did you find as you wrote this thesis?
When I thought about the thesis, Twilight was really popular at the time, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, I wish that there was vampires that I could fall in love with." And I felt like at the time it was ruining the horror genre a little bit because nobody was scared of vampires. Okay. But if you look back at Dracula, yeah, he was like a great seductor, but he just wanted to eat you and make you part of his harem if you were a girl. So it wasn't like he wanted to grow a life with you, which like, oh yes, I'm going to become a vampire's wife or girlfriend and we're going to live happily for eternity. And I felt at the time that the horror genre had lost what made it so great, and that's the fear that comes with horror. A lot of people watch and read horror for the adrenaline rush. And while you get that from romance, it's not scary and it's not the same kind of rush.
No, you definitely watch horror or read horror and watch romance and read romance for completely different reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in that process, I actually learned there was a lot of stuff that was being transferred into the romance genre. You had a lot of paranormal romance. People finding, ghosts in houses that they would be in love with and try to help them, and it wasn't scary. There is even a Frankenstein series which was horror related, but it made the Frankenstein's monster a kind and gentle, caring monster, which he really isn't. He was out to get revenge on Frankenstein, and he was out to, kill as many people in that revenge as possible. So it wasn't scary.
Yeah, and completely different from horror. And I think that things like Twilight and those paranormal romance type stories, I don't feel like they are horror. And I get that, it's distasteful to some people who just love horror. And I do love horror, to take those characters and put them in. But I think they've created a completely new genre doing that. So you really can't compare them to horror. They may be the characters that you traditionally see in horror, but you can't compare it. It's not the same genre at all.
It's not. It kind of does. It has taken away from horror, and we've kind of had to find a balance of what we can make scary again. And you know, there are stuff out there in the horror genre that's really, the monsters aren't scary. I just read a blog or a blurb from a book yesterday about a fat redneck guy, blue collar worker, who becomes a vampire, and he blunders through his vampire life, but it's a horror novel. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really what the thesis really was trying to figure out what does still scare people.
Okay. So I hadn't planned this question, but talking about this, when you talk about horror and the horror that you like, is it typically those traditional horror characters, vampires, werewolves, zombies, all that kind of stuff, the monsters? How do you feel about, say, modern day horror that is more people, real life, could happen, that type of stuff? And where do you compare the two?
I think there are some monsters and stuff that are still scary. And there are some good authors that still makes some of the monsters scary. There are some great zombie books out there. I haven't read a lot of really great vampire novels, but we always fall back on like Anne Rice.
Yep.
And to be honest, if you look at Anne Rice, Lestat, he's always going to be kind of a scary guy.
Yeah.
But the real monsters are people, and you know, to be honest, that's more frightening to me than anything else, because people do act like the monsters in the books.
Yeah, they do. They do. I've always found the stuff that could really happen, you know, those type of real people monsters, I've always found those to be the most scary. The ones that I might not watch until 2 a.m. in a house by myself and then try to go to bed. You know, the monsters like vampires, zombies, I can read all that all day and sleep just fine. But it's the ones about the real life people that I'm just like, that could be my next door neighbor. Who knows? You know,
especially with the resurgence of like serial killer TV shows and, you know, like Mindhunter and I Am a Killer, stuff like that. Yes. Those really help build what is frightening.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think, not to get political at all, but in today's climate, you know, we are afraid of our next door neighbor more than anybody else sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about your writing process. How would you describe your writing process?
Chaotic.
Okay. So do you use a typewriter, a computer? Do you dictate? Do you handwrite?
I actually handwrite everything first. For me, it's the easiest way to get my first edits done. So I'll handwrite everything, and then the first time I type it into the computer, that's usually when I start the editing process.
That sounds so daunting to me. Like I cannot, my brain goes way faster than my hand can write. I think that would drive me crazy. How many notebooks does it take to write a novel?
I think my last one took 15 or 20. I have them actually in a box somewhere.
And you write in order then? You don't skip around while you're writing?
No, sometimes I'll write different characters. So the zombie books that I have, they follow 3 characters for each book generally. So I'll have notebooks for specific characters. But I don't always write in order. Sometimes I'll have to start a new notebook just to skip around a little bit.
Okay, interesting. All right. So how long on average does it take you to write one of your novels?
It really depends on my motivation, how I'm feeling about it, and, you know, life. Because as we all know, sometimes life does get in the way of everything else you're trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
My novel that I've got out at publishers right now, it took me about 2 months to write, and it's about 69,000 words.
Wow. That's such a short period of time. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was really motivated with that one because I was doing it during NaNoWriMo, and I really wanted to get that 50,000 words. So I was like writing every day, and I actually got, I think it was almost the whole complete novel during that month.
That's awesome. That is really cool. So what drew you to zombies? I know you love horror. I know you love all horror movies, but why zombies in particular?
Well, honestly, the first zombie book that I have is called Zombies Are People Too, and it was a joke. That's it.
That's it.
I kept seeing T-shirts, bumper stickers, stuff like that that says zombies were people too, and I'm like, well, just because you're dead doesn't make you less of a person.
Okay.
So I kind of ran with that, and that's how the first novel came about. And I actually wasn't planning on writing a series, but I couldn't fit all of the information that came up in my first book.
So second book is Zombies Bite. And third book is Zombie Wasteland.
Yep.
And you're still working on book 4, ZOMBIEMERICA? Is that right?
ZOMBIEMERICA. Yeah.
ZOMBIEMERICA. All right, so I know, but tell our viewers how these covers came about and who did them. Who did these covers, Stacy?
I actually did the covers. I have been painting and drawing since I was young. I won a contest when I was 13 for an oil painting that I did. My grandfather actually taught me how to paint. So I've been doing art since I was young, and I couldn't really find anything that was new and fresh for the covers, because most of the time when you look at zombie books, it's like either some sort of zombie arm coming out of the ground, or it's like an apocalyptic wasteland scene. So I wanted something that represented what was happening in each book.
Okay. I love the covers. I think they're so unique, and they look like paintings. I mean, they draw you in, whereas for me, if I don't like the cover of a book, I'm not as likely to pick it up and read the back.
Right.
You know, and you have to have shelf appeal. So these definitely have shelf appeal to me. So I love them. So talking about zombies, what is your favorite zombie movie or TV show, and why? And are there any that you just cringe at?
Yes. Let's start with the favorites. My favorite zombie movie is Dead Snow. It's a Norwegian zombie movie with Nazi zombies, and it's hilarious. I always tell people to watch it because it has actually the best uses of intestines that I've ever seen.
Okay, awesome. Zombie Snow. I will have to check that one out. And what do you cringe at?
So The Walking Dead, actually, the graphic novels, I started with those. And I love them. They're fabulous. I think that they really represent what really zombies are about. And that leads back to the question of what's horrifying, what's scary. Because if you read the Walking Dead series, the graphic novels, it's the people that are scary, not really the zombies.
Right.
I feel like the television show, which it has its merits. I mean, everybody for a while was like, Daryl Dixon, yay! He's not a character that is in the graphic novels. But he was part of the main focus, and they didn't do some of the things that were really thought-provoking in the graphic novels in the TV show.
Okay. So like most books that are turned into either TV shows or movies, it kind of fell short for you. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know the last time I watched a movie. No, I do. Okay. So recently, in recent years, the only book I can even remotely think of that I read the book and I watched the movie and I loved them both was, what is it called? It's the game one, Ready Player One. Loved the book, loved the movie, but true to form, most books just don't hold up in movie form quite as well. There's just so much in the book, and I would imagine with the graphic novel, there's so much in the graphic novel, they just couldn't get it all.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I liked The Walking Dead for a while, and then it kind of fizzled out for me. So, yeah.
I think also people started getting tired of zombies because at the time The Walking Dead, like season 4 came out, you had a bunch of movies coming out as well and other TV shows. There is a better zombie show. It didn't last as long. I think it's only 5 seasons maybe. But Z Nation, much better than The Walking Dead.
Was that the one that was the spinoff or no?
No, that's Fear the Walking Dead.
Okay. Z Nation. All right. So what are you currently working on? What are you writing right now? Is it book 4?
It's book 4 for the zombie book. I also have a book about Lucifer, thinking about retiring. It's basically a Christmas Carol in hell.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So Lucifer's retiring, and it's a Christmas Carol in hell. Interesting.
Yeah, he's visited by 3 demons, or whoever from his past or whatever, and they're trying to convince him not to retire.
Awesome. Very cool. Now, how is your Lucifer? Is he similar to like the Lucifer on the TV show Lucifer? Who doesn't want to go back to hell?
I mean, he dresses as nice, but he's not as handsome and sexy.
Okay. Okay. I like that. All right. What type of characters can your readers expect from you? Now, these are beautiful covers, pretty and colorful, but teenagers, young kids probably shouldn't pick up these books. So tell our viewers what types of scenes and what types of characters they can expect from your books.
I usually have like a down-to-earth human type character who brings really the humanity, keeps the humanity in the story in each book. The first book, I think the first and the second book is that character is a teenage girl named Valerie. Okay. And she's 19 at the start of the zombie apocalypse. She goes through a lot. She really is that character that a lot of people can relate to. And then I also have a father in the first book, Robert, who he's a single dad. He's trying to protect his kids, and that's another person that people can relate to. But then I also have the bad people. So I have a serial killer named Marcus, and he goes all throughout all of the novels. And he, for some strange reason, is a lot of people's favorite character. I think it's because of the bad guy appeal. He is a serial killer, like I said, and he really wants to try to make a zombie army. And the book I'm currently working on, we're going to figure out if that's going to work out for him or not. And then we have, so my books involve smart zombies. They're not dumb. They have a way of regaining knowledge of their previous life. So they understand who they were. They understand what their lives were like before. They don't always remember everything, but it brings part of that humanity back to them, so they're not just, mindless monsters like you see in a lot of zombie.
Roaming around looking for brains.
Yeah. They do still want that food. It's more about feeling close to what they lost rather than gaining food.
Okay. So where do you like to write? Do you have a favorite place?
Not really. I have a tendency to write just whenever it strikes me. I have terrible insomnia, so sometimes it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I actually wrote one of my books when my husband was deployed, so it's nice when he's not around, I guess.
We won't tell him you said that.
He's down the hall. He heard that. He's like, what? Oh, no, he said thanks. Never mind.
Okay. What is your most memorable moment being an author? It can be in the writing process. It can be with fans, whatever. What is your most memorable moment as an author?
I actually have 2.
Okay.
The first one was when I was living in Alabama, I got tickets to go and see Stephen King speak. That was the amazing thing ever, because he not only talked about the writing process, but he talked about just his life in general, which was
yeah.
Oh, that was probably, especially as a horror author, that was like I think that's one of the moments that all horror authors dream of, is like seeing Stephen King in person.
Yeah, jealous right here. Yeah.
That was one. And then the second one happened last year. I was at a small little book con in Virginia which is where I was living at the time. And a girl came rushing up and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited to see you. I've been looking everywhere for you. I want all of your books. I've been like looking forward to meeting you for like months since I heard about this whole thing." And she was just so excited and so energetic. And she's just like one of the fans that I've had interactions with like that. But when fans come up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited to meet you," because being an indie author, you feel small sometimes, like you're not getting seen a lot. And when people come up like that, it's like, "Oh wow," and then you just want to like talk to them forever. Like, "So what do you like? Do you like my books?"
Now, did she tell you how she found out about you, or had she read something of yours before?
Apparently, a friend of hers had the first book, and she had started reading it, but then she heard that there was going to be this little book con thing, and she was like, "Oh my God, I have to go and meet her." So that's awesome. Yeah.
That's a great feeling, because you're right. Absolutely. As an indie author, you often feel like nobody is getting the word. They're not reading, they're not hearing about. And it's nice to know that somebody other than your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, whoever, other than that, friend next door, somebody has seen your book, somebody that you don't know. So that's awesome to be able to connect with somebody like that. So that's like an awesome experience. What is the hardest thing about being an indie author?
One of the hardest things for me is judgment that you get from people. So people often have said or assume that since you are an indie author that you couldn't get in with a traditional publisher. And that's not always the case. I did actually have an agent for a little while, but we just didn't really see eye to eye, so we ended up parting ways. Okay. For an indie author especially, it's the judgment. People are like, "Oh, well, your book's going to be terrible. You just published it because you can publish it for free on Amazon or whatever," which isn't really the case. Yeah. Also, as a horror author, people have feelings about horror.
They do.
And a lot of people that come up and they're like, "What are your books about?" And I'm like, "Well, it says on the cover it's zombies." And they're like, "Oh, well, I don't read that because it's terrible." And I've actually had people say that they wouldn't read stuff like what I wrote because it shouldn't be put out in the world and stuff like that. So
just because they're zombies.
Just because it's horror and it usually involves death and mystical stuff or whatever. So yeah.
Well, there is some death in yours.
I mean, it's zombies.
Just a little. I'm not going to give anything away, but there's some death in there. All right. Well, how do you market your book? I mean, you mentioned Amazon, which, yes, all of us indie authors and many, most non-traditionally published authors are on Amazon. How else do you market your books? And what have you found works the best?
I go to as many cons as I can. Not always just to sell my books. Sometimes it's just networking. Mm-hmm. If you go to the small ones, you get a lot of people that are just, interested in whatever. So bring business cards, pass them out, meet other authors. A lot of it's networking at cons. Some is word of mouth. So if, people buy your books, they tell a lot of other people. I find that actually is one of the biggest things is just people who have bought your books telling their friends. I have a blog, a website, stacykingsley.com, and I do blog at least once a month. I try to do every week, but sometimes, again, life gets away from you. So, but yeah, I have Twitter. We talk about zombies and books and stuff on Twitter a lot. So, just getting out there, just talking to as many people as you can. I can sit in a coffee shop. Well, maybe not now because you can't really sit in a coffee shop. But I can sit in a coffee shop and somebody will see working or reading one of my books and like, "Oh, what do you like to read?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm an author, so I try to stay up on the horror genre and I read a lot of horror." And then we get into a whole conversation about horror and they're like, "Well, what do you write?" And then I hand them my business card.
That's awesome. That's great, actually. So what do you do in your spare time when you're not writing?
I work. I have a day job, unfortunately, like a lot of authors. unless you're Stephen King, you can't really afford to quit your job. I do a lot of reading. Since moving to Arizona, I try to get outside a lot because there's a lot of hiking and stuff. Haven't been able to do as much because of coronavirus. I'm also an artist, like I said, so I do still do some of the art stuff. I mean, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. There's a lot of stuff that I enjoy doing, hanging out with my cats and my husband.
Okay. So my next question was, do you read a lot? And I know the answer to that because you're my book fairy. And you did answer that you do like to read a lot, but what do you prefer your reading medium to be? Do you prefer ebooks, paperbacks, hardcover? Do you have a preference? Will you read anything?
So I prefer paperbacks most of the time because it's easy to carry them around. I do have an e-reader, but I'll be honest. So I got it at the Thanksgiving Black Friday sales, and I haven't even opened it yet.
No.
Yeah. But I do have a lot of books on Amazon, or the Kindle or whatever. So I do have stuff. I have read books on my phone.
Yep.
But I prefer paperbacks. I do have a lot of hard copies, but I prefer paperbacks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I prefer a paperback to a hard copy, and I prefer a paperback to an ebook. I have a library on my phone, and I love that for like if you're standing in line somewhere and you don't have your purse with your book. But I love having a book with me. It's the best way to just kind of get through a long day or a period of time that you're just waiting to do nothing.
And exercising in Audible. Audible is great. So.
See, I have not gotten into the Audible yet. My husband loves Audible. That's how he reads. But I don't know. There's something about being able to just see the words on paper that I really like. I don't know. All right. So is there anything, you did mention that you have a book with a publisher right now that you're shopping
It's out. Yeah.
What is that one?
It's called The Obsolete. That's just the working title. It's about a futuristic world where people live on something called the grid. So they live in these cells, and they have in these cells things like 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, and how many rooms you have in your cell is based on your social standings. So it's all based on social media. However, there are things that are limited. So there's no physical touch. You never actually see another person. It's all kind of like this. It's all video. And people are not created how they're created now. I mean, parents don't generally have children.
Well, clearly, if they have no physical contact, they couldn't be created the way they are now.
Right.
So when should we expect to actually get to see this book?
Well, it's out with, I think, 2 publishers right now.
Okay, so it's not with a publisher. You're kind of trying to get rid of it. You're trying to sell it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, trying to sell it.
That's exciting.
And if neither of the publishers think that it's a good fit for them, I'll just probably self-publish it because next year I'm going to be at Phoenix Fan Fusion and I want to have it then.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm crossing my fingers that a publisher picks it up. That would be amazing. But that sounds really good. So when it is out and available, you have to let me know so that I can get that.
Of course.
All right. So I like to end all of my interviews with the James Lipton Inside the Actors Studio 10 questions. So if you've never seen that, this will be a surprise for you. If you have watched the show, and I used to watch it religiously, then it won't be so much of a surprise. But what you're going to do is you're going to answer the questions as quickly as you can without overthinking anything. Okay? All right. What is your favorite word?
Guppy.
What is your least favorite word?
Cake.
What turns you on?
Books.
What turns you off?
Stupid people.
What sound or noise do you love?
My husband's laugh.
Oh. What sound or noise do you hate?
That's also my husband's laugh.
Okay. What is your favorite curse word?
Probably fuck.
What profession other than your own and other than writing would you like to try?
Police officer.
What profession would you never want to try?
Waitress.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Take a seat. You're in charge now.
Ooh, I like that. That's awesome. Well, thank you for playing. All right, so those are my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers before we sign off?
No, this was fun.
Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this with me. I will include Stacy's links in the description of this video below, so make sure you go out and check out her books, purchase them, read them, and support her as an author. All right, everybody, this was wonderful and fun, so bye-bye.